Testing, testing. Can you guys see me? I see Joe and Ray. Just so you know, if you click on that, as I put it in the chat. Close that one. I put it in the chat. There is a link, and you're able to click on it, and it'll bring you into the live broadcast. Okay, so no. Manage moderators. What does that mean? All right, I don't know what. Oh. Okay. Save. All right. Okay. So, Ray, will you, if you're able to, I don't know if you're with your mom or not, but would you try clicking on the link and trying to come in and see if that works? So I'm just giving everybody an opportunity to get in. So this is the new, well, at least we'll see. We'll see what tonight looks like. I can tell you that I don't have a stutter. And so I'm very happy about that. Like, I am over the moon about the fact that I don't have a stutter. So, yeah, let me fix my posture. Make sure you guys can see me. So tonight, we are working from chapter 13 and discover the power within you. And it's called this. So this is the text. And it's called Jesus's formula for healing. Oh, I wrote it wrong. But anyway, Jesus's formula for healing is the conversation tonight. And Ray, you let me know if you're able to pull yourself in, or somebody try it. But the link will bring you into the live broadcast. Now this, what does that mean? Well, I can close that. Yes, Joe, you're right. You do. Well, no, I don't know if you need Google Chrome so much as you need the Hangout extension. If you're using Mozilla or even Internet Explorer, you do need the Hangout extension. Now, where to get it from, I'm not sure. I can't tell you that. But if you Google Hangout extension, you'll get it. All right, I'm gonna downsize that. And I need a way to like stay on the comments or pop out the chat. Oh, perfect. Perfect. You guys, I don't know. YouTube Live might be the business. YouTube Live might be the business because I was just able to pop out the chat. So I'm able to keep up with what people are saying, because that was always a challenge, was to keep up with comments that were coming from like other areas. So it's not the greatest that people aren't live, but I can see the chat. And then here, let me make that smaller so I can toggle between that. Okay. All right. This may not be a bad thing. So get your popcorn. Let's talk about this healing formula of Jesus. Yeah, Joe, absolutely. Where listen, however you want to dial in. Hi Olga. I like people live, but that's just me because like hanging out with people. Olga, I put a link there that you can click and it'll bring you live into the broadcast. I just want to make sure I say that to anybody that's interested in joining me live. Well, sitting live in the conversation. Um, hello, hello, Shanti. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Shanti. Um, so yeah, we'll get started in a few minutes. I just wanted to open up early because this is the first time that I have used just YouTube Live. So the Bible Hangout started out as a Google Hangout. That's why it was called the Bible Hangout, because it was on the Google Hangouts platform. And then the Google Hangouts platform got really glitchy, had a couple of like just real serious issues a couple of nights. And so I just said, let me find a webinar software. And so I went with Webinar Jam because it was a overlay on top of the Google Hangouts platform. And that worked for a while, and then Google stopped supporting it. Like you can't even use Webinar Jam to like get to Google Hangouts on air anymore. But now this is just YouTube Live. So I set up my events through there. And I guess the difference is like what would happen with Webinar Jam is that when you would register for the, like, say, confirm that you're interested, and let's say you share the link, essentially it would, put somebody on my mailing list. So I guess that's the drawback. I got to make a big appeal like, hey, sign up for my mailing list. So excited to have you here, Shanti. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This has been a crazy week because I went out of town this last week, at the end of last week, to speak at a conference this past weekend. And I was so exhausted from traveling. Okay, so here's the thing. I dream of private travel. I have lots of private planes on my vision board, but I'm reaching the point where it's actually required because you fly all day. Like literally, so going into Milwaukee, there was not a direct flight, right? So I left LA, meaning left my home at 3:30 in the morning, Thursday, Friday morning. Parked my car at a friend's house, caught Uber to the airport, and then flew. Like I didn't get to Milwaukee, like literally to the hotel until 4 in the afternoon. So literally 24 hours or 12 hours, 12 hours. That's too long. So anyway, I say all that to say that this week has been intense and lack of sleep and trying to catch up and all of that. So that this Google Hangout thing is working. We've got about 60 seconds and then I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So excited. All right, Google. Because Google has not been my friend all the time. So the fact that this is like semi working out is like deep. All right. Now I have notes everywhere. So y'all just bear with me because I got this, I got the blog post up, I got the book out, I got, so I got all the different pieces that I'm going to be toggling between. And I got my phone in case somebody texts me and say, hey, I can't figure this thing out. Sorry, I got my nose running. All right. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So Andrea, hey Quintina, good to see you. I was hanging out with Quintina this weekend. Andrea, I'm gonna post the link. Into the broadcast. Okay. All right. So let me say that. Just posted in case you want to come in. Okay. Got it. Okay. All right. So let's get started. I'm actually pleased that this like seems to be working out. Like makes me sad for all that money that was spent with Webinar Jam. Not bad mouthing Webinar Jam, but um it doesn't seem like that was a requirement. All right. So let's make sure that this from current slide. So hang on. Let me make sure to see what you guys are seeing. Linda!
Oh,
I'm gonna mute you so I can go ahead and get started.
oh.
Uh-oh. All right. Okay, let me stop, but then I gotta do the thing again. So hang on, just bear with me. Yay, people are able to come in. Praise the Lord. Okay. So the conversation tonight is, what do you think about spiritual healing? I kind of want to like dig into that. And really kind of pick that apart. Sorry. Okay, apparently I'm getting a bunch of text messages now. Hold on. Oh, in YouTube comments. Okay. Okay. From YouTube watch page. Okay. All right. So we just got a little bit of housekeeping tonight to be able to like pull all this together. But we're working from the chapter Jesus's healing formula, or really it says Jesus's formula for healing. Just realized that was a typo, but yeah, let's just go with it. All right, so I've got some announcements. We're going to talk about opening prayer, why the power within you matters. We revisit this slide every week, avoiding what I call the spiritual side eye, and then keys to spiritual healing, and then Q&A. And of course, ask questions throughout. And why. I always share with you why this is important to me. And what I realize is that you know, each of us has spiritual gifts, and we do this assessment. I'm actually going to do something for the people with the Bible Hangout, because what I'm interested in is really helping you find your spiritual gifts. And I'll share some more information about that later. But it really is just a remarkable experience to just know what your spiritual gifts are and know how you are organized. And one of the ways that I'm gifted is in teaching. It is what I love to do. I do it for free. And so that's why this is here every night, every Thursday night, and why it's available online for free is that I want people to have this teaching. I think that there's not, I can't think of anything better than this. It really is that important to me. And it's been so transformative in my experience that I want to share that with you for your experience. And my hope is that this has value and helps you to move forward in your life, that it inspires you, honestly, to live life full out. That really is the bottom line, is that when you live life full out, my life is better, because you're contributing your gifts to the world, and not only are you benefiting, but I'm benefiting, and the world is benefiting from you contributing your gifts to the world. So that's why this is here. It is free, but it does cost. Look, the way things are going, that Webinar Jam cost is going to go away. Praise the Lord. But there's still other costs, and just also the time that it takes to put it together, because it is effort. And so whatever you decide to do to support it is greatly appreciated. You can go right over to revsherri.com and make a contribution. And if this has sown a seed in you, would you consider sowing a seed in this, so that we are able to take this message around the world? So today we're using YouTube Live without Webinar Jam, which is kind of cool. Like I like the way this is going so far. And if we like this format, then we can continue with YouTube Live and just get rid of Webinar Jam altogether. So definitely leave me your feedback. Let me know what you think. And, you know, we'll see. Hey, Phyllis. Hey, Eves. I see you guys in there. I'm feeling good about this whole YouTube Live thing. I'm not mad at all. I was so resistant. Oh, man. So the way this series works, there's a blog and there's the Bible Hangout. The blog, in my best world, the blog goes out at the top of the morning, but In most times, the blog is out in the early afternoon to late afternoon, and then the Bible Hangout at 7 o'clock on Thursday night Pacific Standard Time. If you want to keep up with this, like if you're like not sitting in this live broadcast or you've never heard of me before and you're seeing this, you can actually go over to revsherri.com and you can subscribe. And there's all kinds of wonderful things that I send. And so I just encourage you to come be a part of the spiritual community. Panorama of Truth is coming in August 9th through the 13th. I will be in Montego Bay, Jamaica at the Hyatt Ziva Rose Hall. And I am, you know what? I'm going to ask y'all to claim something with me. I want to be a speaker for Panorama of Truth. That is my goal, is to be a speaker for Panorama of Truth. And so what I am asking you to agree with me is that the universe will work it out so that I can become a speaker for Panorama of Truth. I'm going to just throw it out there because I want to, I just believe that that's possible. So putting it out there to the universe. I have no influence over who they choose for the speakers outside of my own prayers. But if you can agree with me that works out, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you. The scripture for this series is Luke 17:20 and 21. And it reads, once Jesus was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God was coming, and he answered, the kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed, nor will they say, look, here it is, or there it is. For in fact, the kingdom of God is within you. And that's Luke 17:20 and 21. And let's just take a moment to just relax. And I just want to give thanks for this platform without Webinar Jam, like this drama-free platform. Just hello, that's awesome. Thanks God for that. But I want to thank God for just so many blessings in my life. There's so many things, so many new things happening. And I just want to just give thanks for that. And I know that there are things that are happening for you too, that the byproduct of this spiritual study is growth and expansion along all lines. And so I just bless the Spirit for newness. Bless the Spirit for joy, for happiness, and for divine right action. And I bless this class and everything that will be shared here tonight. And I thank you, God, for this conversation. I thank you for this conversation. Thank you. In the name and nature of Jesus, the Christ, it is so, and so it is, and amen. So why the power within you matters. You must will to do the will of God. When you pray, thy will be done, you have to back that up with the will to do the will. And we're talking about healing, but the healing is not just for the body, right? The healing is for every aspect of your life. And sickness often comes from a will to be sick. Health must be preceded by a will to be well, a will to live, a will to overcome. And I can't stress that enough, that that life gives you what you are willing for. So you may say, you know what, I want to be a millionaire, but your behavior demonstrates whether or not you are willing to be a millionaire. You may say, hey, I want to be, I want to travel the world, but do you have the will to travel the world? Because to travel the world requires certain things. It requires you to leave where you are. It requires you to plan out your trips. It requires you to begin to put things in motion. That sometimes we want things, but we don't have a willingness toward them. And with spiritual healing, you have to have a willingness for spiritual healing. Like it doesn't just happen. You've got a will to will the will of God. Right? That sounded like a tongue twister, but just go with it. That you must will to be the will of God. That you've and so the power matters because it doesn't move until you will it in a particular direction. So you always have to back up, praying for the will to be done with willing to do God's will. You always have to, like, there's a backup process to this. There's a backup procedure, or not even backup, but a necessary next step. And that necessary next step is your willingness to do the will of God. And so this power matters because it doesn't do the will of God until you will it to do so. You may will it into any form that you choose, into any form. Whatever you choose, you can will it into that form. So if you're asking for God's will to be done, then you have to have a willingness to then follow through on that. So I feel like I've said will like several times, and I don't want to talk in circles because I'm not trying to go in circles, but I am saying that you have a part in the will of God being done in your life. As it regards health, healing, wholeness on every level, not just in the body, but in your money, in your relationships, in your career, in your friendships, in every area of your life. You have a part, you have a role to play in allowing the will of God to be done on earth, or in earth, really is what it says, in earth as it is in heaven, basically in your body. The earth metaphysically represents your body, not just the earth like dirt you stand on, but your body is the earth metaphysically is your body. So when we're asking for that will to be done, it's in these earthly things that we want the will to be done. It's in these how I handle my money, I want the will of God to be done. How I handle my friendships, I want the will of God to be done. How I handle my church, I want the will of God to be done. But you've got to have a willingness. So, for example, there may be an area where you are not demonstrating, where you want greater health or greater wealth or greater happiness, but you're not living at the level that you believe that you can and want to live at. Generally, when there's something that you're not demonstrating, it's pointing to something that you just don't know. You don't know that you don't know it, but you don't know it. And it's interfering with your ability to manifest. When you say, I will to do the will of God in my life as regards to my money, but your money is still looking funny, that there's something that you are not understanding about money that needs to be understood in order to allow the will to be done. And so there always has to be this reaching on your part for new information, new ideas, to stretch your mind open so that God may come through you and flow through you in an even and a harmonious way. But you have to be willing. And a lot of times we want things, but we're not willing. And so we won't go out and get the information that we need. We won't ask for the help that we need. And we stay in our corner. It's protected there. We know it. It's familiar. There's no guessing, there. But it also means that there's no growth there. And so we have to be willing to step out and get a new piece of information and shake up the paradigm that we're working with to be able to invite something new in. We must be willing to change, must be willing to think a new thought. So I think that when we talk about spiritual healing, even in New Thought churches, be honest, it's almost like you get the spiritual side eye, but if you think about it, and tell me if I'm wrong, I don't know that there's anybody in the public arena that discusses spiritual healing anymore. Meaning in those kinds of terms. I think about the testimony of Dodie Osteen, right? We know about that testimony, but beyond that, what do we have? I can't think of one person like, Benny Hinn, but I think he's old, but there's no new young person coming up talking about spiritual healing, right? When I was writing this up, I remembered Wayne Dyer, and that was a big public thing, where he claims to have been healed of cancer. I think it was leukemia that he had, by John of God. If you guys are familiar with him, he's a mystic, I think, that lives in the Amazon or Tibet or somewhere, but he's not in the US. And it was a big deal because it was a a very public, but it was a remote surgery of his cancer. So it was essentially a healing in the spirit. Do you guys remember this? But here's the thing: when he died, his family actually had to put out a statement to combat all the people who were speculating that he died from cancer. And they had to put out a statement and say, no, he didn't die from cancer. And but again, spiritual healing, you start talking about spiritual healing, you'll get the side eye. And the thing is, and I don't know if you know this, but about 1/3 of the gospel record of the 4 gospels in our canon are devoted to Jesus's practice of healing, or to him talking about healing and cures. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so, but the thing is that if you go into any church, it's like spiritual healing is either frowned upon to talk about spiritual healing, or it's the idea that somehow Jesus's miracles would be degraded if we duplicated them. This rationalization. Oh, thank you, Quintina. She says Louise Hay is one who speaks about healing. Yes, you're right. But guess what? She's not 20. I'm talking about young people. I'm talking about, young people. Yes, I agree with you. You're right. Thank you for saying that, Louise Hay. But, young people, like somebody that's coming up, like it's something that you don't see. Like, I think about somebody young, who's the woman in the war room? Her brother is Anthony Evans, Patricia Evans. I don't know her last name. She's married. Her father is a pastor, Anthony Evans Senior, or Tony Evans, or whatever his name is. You don't hear people talking about, or TD Jakes or Creflo Dolly. When it's healing, it's I'm healed by his stripes, or that kind of language, but not spiritual healing, where I'm going to handle this spiritually. I'm going to work with God on this healing. That it's almost frowned upon. And the rationalization is that, well, sickness, it is God's will, right? And you don't want to question God's will. And so you should accept whatever it is that comes, even terrible illnesses, in kind of stoic submission. And so any effort toward healing is almost like a rebellion against God. Think about Christian Science, right? And isn't there a case recently where there were some parents who decided to care for their children through spiritual healing, and I want to say they sent those parents to jail. Or the huge debate that is raged about vaccinations and whether or not vaccinations are safe. I mean, it's just one of those things where you get the side eye, like, oh, okay, all right, you own that stuff. And so I think one of the quickest ways to kind of get that energy, like, the eye roll, like, oh, okay, is to start talking about spiritual healing. So I want to give you some of the keys to spiritual healing, and I'm using this chapter as an outline. But the first is that we really do need a new mindset about miracles. We need a new mindset about miracles. You got to understand that we live in an orderly universe. We live in an orderly universe, and what we typically call a miracle refers to an incident that defies or steps around universal law. And we want to be mindful, because there is no such thing as deviation from universal law. And it's almost like we need a new word, or at least just a new mindset. Because again, deviation from universal law is impossible. Jesus knew that he was not God, the creator. He knew that he was the very self-livingness of God, the activity of God in expression. His power was not in changing the laws of the universe, but in his high consciousness of the law. And he wasn't a magician. In his ministry, he simply fulfilled divine law on a higher level than anyone has before or since. The quote unquote miracle healings were not only an evidence of the divinity of Jesus, but they also evidenced the divinity of man, of the very person that was being healed. The potential for healing is in every person just because that person is divine. And so what we come to is that all healing is a demonstration of the law of life, not a deviation from it. Is a demonstration of the law of life, not a deviation from it. And so we have to be mindful of our language. We have to be mindful of how we talk about healing, because very often we make healing this, I don't want to say thing that it's not, but we make healing this mystery thing, not mystical, but mystery. And really there is no healing that does not take advantage of spiritual law. As like, just sit with that. There is no healing that does not unfold according to spiritual law. Now, it may be unfolding according to a spiritual law that we do not yet understand, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't unfold according to spiritual law. And there are laws that even today we do not yet know of because of the level at which we're operating. And a few chapters back, we used the metaphor of the butterfly, that the butterfly and the caterpillar are both different forms of the same entity. And we all know that a caterpillar goes through the metamorphosis process. And that metamorphosis process, then he comes out of the cocoon, or she comes out of the cocoon, and you have the beautiful butterfly, but they're still the same entity. But they're in different forms. And when it changes form, it's able to take advantage of higher laws. It's able to take advantage of the law of aerodynamics, which in the form of a caterpillar, it couldn't take advantage of. And so depending on the level at which you are vibrating, depending on the level at which you're showing up for life, you may or may not be able to take advantage of the law of life, of the higher laws that govern spiritual healing. And so you may only be able to deal with healing a paper cut, but healing a gushing wound might be more than, or outside of, what you feel is possible for you. Hey, Constance, I see you there. I'm gonna post this link one more time. Constance, you can, or anybody, link to join live. Okay. All right. So be mindful that it, just because it may not be something that you know how to demonstrate today, it does not mean that as you continue to work, as you continue to reach for that imprisoned splendor within, as you continue to tap into the Christ of your being, can begin to take advantage of these higher laws. But there is no healing. So when you say, oh, I'm praying for a miracle, the challenge is that it sets up this idea that it's something's going to happen that circumvents or steps around or defies spiritual law, and there is no such thing. This universe is undeviating and unchanging in its order and its structure. And what we learn to do is to cooperate with the laws that govern the universe so that we may max out on the benefits of what it means to walk in these human forms. Health is your birthright. Now, this was really the thing that Johnny read. So Reverend Dr. Coleman, who founded the Universal Foundation for Better Living, who founded Christ Unity Temple, which later became Christ Universal Temple, who is just an incredible minister and really just, is the reason I'm even doing what I'm doing, was diagnosed, I believe, in the early 1950s with an incurable disease and was given 6 months to live. She was in her 30s at the time. She had been given this diagnosis, and as she was walking through the foyer of her home, a pamphlet from Unity fell on the floor, and she picked it up, and the sentence that jumped out at her said, "Health is your birthright. You cannot be sick." And she wanted to understand, well, who could write such a thing? Because I've just been given this diagnosis. I've just been told that it's over. Basically wrap up your affairs because it's. And her mom says, well, look, I've been studying, the pamphlet was from Unity. I've been studying this stuff, but you should just go there because they could explain it a lot better than I did. And so she actually goes to Unity like, what do you mean I don't have to be sick? Because I just got this diagnosis. She ends up staying there and studying and becoming a minister. And, she didn't make her transition until 2014, I think 14 or 15. But she went on to discover the principles that underlie spiritual healing, and she applied them in her life. And we have the same opportunity today. Spiritual healing, we have to watch our language, because a lot of times we'll say things like, oh, I'm calling on God's favor, with this idea that we are somehow swaying God to do something that God wouldn't do. And spiritual healing is not about trying to get some kind of special favor from God or to step around divine or law. We don't use a different set of laws in spiritual healing than those that are used in medical or surgical healing. The life principle can be activated by meditation or medication. It really doesn't make a difference. There was a quote that he had. I don't think it's his. I think he used somebody else's on page 162. And it says, the infinite creative potential of the human brain is housed in a potentially indestructible body, which has a built-in replacement system, its own self-supporting devices. And what is fascinating about the body, and you can check with any scientist, that we have learned that as long as the supply system is intact, the body continually takes itself apart and puts itself together, not merely organ by organ or cell by cell, but literally molecule by molecule. Potentially, therefore, it is constantly renewed and never ages. Consequently, there is no reason why any human being need die. That's on page 162. And he's quoting, I'll tell you who he's quoting. He is quoting the Harvard Alumni Bulletin, and the writer is Dr. Lawrence Kuby, someone who was an authority in the field of psychiatry and psychoanalysis. And at the time of the writing, he was the director of Pratt Hospital in Maryland. But think about that the body is continually replenishing itself molecule by molecule. And if you keep the supply system intact, then the body will continuously take itself apart and put itself together again. I want you to know that Jesus did not originate spiritual healing. He didn't make the healing law. He didn't heal through some magic or mystical power or some divine dispensation that helped him step around the laws of life. It was possible because humankind, is essentially a spiritual being. And healing is simply the art of opening out a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape. Again, spiritual healing is not an attempt to gain special favor with God. That's not what this is about. Spiritual healing is about letting the light out. Letting the light out. One of the conditions for true prayer is forgiveness. And you forgive your way to the light, right? All energy is light, and it's either light exposed or light concealed. But it's all energy is light. And it gets concealed in anger. It gets concealed in sadness. It gets concealed in grief. But you have tools. You can forgive your way to the light, and you don't get new energy. What you get is that you transmute the energy. You transmute the form that it's in, right? So it's in the form of anger. And the forgiveness transmutes it into light energy that you can then repurpose. So no new energy. What you do is you change the form that the energy is in. And so it's the same energy. And so many times what ages the body are all the regrets. What ages the body are all the little pieces of unfinished business. You know, all the places where you've got open-ended things, right? That, you know, you for whatever reason, life just happened. So you just, you know, you wanted to end the situation, you didn't end it. And so it's just kind of like sitting there in the, you know, in the balance, you know, and you say, oh, you know what, I'm really done with this situation. This is nothing or whatever. It's just, you know, you got the vestiges of it. But what happens is that these are all these little bits of yourself that have been left strewn across your life. And so you have to be intentional about closing the door on things. Something I learned from a friend of mine whose father passed away years ago now. I want to say suddenly, but I learned something from her that with grief, that when things end, you have to be intentional about closing the door on that particular thing. So losing a job or leaving a job, moving to another area of the country, friendships that end, and what she discovered through working to process the grief of her father, you know, the loss of her father, is that there are all these little griefs across our life that we never process. And what I know about consciousness is that's just a little, it's like a leakage, right? And so you want all of the energy that is yours to have and use and shape, but you don't, because it's leaked across all these different areas. And so there has to be this intention to basically go get your life back. That's really it. You know, this is why you know, when you do some of the 12-step programs, they have you go and make amends with different relationships that you have violated, and different doors that were left open, but you're no longer there, but the energy is still there, because it's like you've got to shore up, you got to close up all of that stuff. And many of us have basically leaked across our lifetime. And so we get to 40, 50, and 60, and we say, "Ooh, I'm tired." But no, you're not really tired. What you are, you have leaked yourself out across your teens, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. And here you are now 50, and there's no you to work with in the present. And so, yeah, you feel lethargic, but you can forgive your way to the light. You can recapture that energy, that forgiveness. That one of the benefits of forgiveness is that it restores that light to you for your use. Let me know if you guys have any questions on that. God does not will sickness. Now, I'm gonna tell y'all, I have a few pet peeves. One of them is somebody saying something like, God took me through that so he could get the glory. Oh my God. The work that it takes to be quiet when I hear stuff like that for me is like nails on a chalkboard, because God will never take you where he cannot keep you. God will never take you where he cannot keep you. Think of it this way. God, whatever God does, he does it in a way that's permanent. God only deals in permanency. Think about that. This is the absolute, right? He's unchanging. So when God moves, it's permanent. Therefore, if God ever gave you a sickness, there'd be nothing you or anyone else could do, Jesus included, to eliminate that sickness. Whatever God ever does, God always does. And so spirit cannot in one breath will sickness and in another breath will its exact opposite, because to do so would require God to be changing. And it may rub you the wrong way, depending on what you're dealing with, to deal with the explanation that humankind then creates its own experience. right? We don't want to believe that, especially in regards to like racism, some of that stuff, some of that craziness, right? Surely you're not telling me that we're responsible. And there are whole YouTube models dedicated to telling you about what it is to be descendants of slaves and all of this stuff, right? There are whole models. We may not be satisfied with the explanation that humankind creates its own experience, but that doesn't mean that God has to be the author of the ills that we experience in this life. The scripture says that God is not the author of confusion, right? And I don't know of anything more confused than not having enough money, than not having enough health, not having enough friendship, companionship. I don't know anything more confused than that. Not having what you need. So you can't get anything done because you're always trying to grasp to, right? God does not will sickness because God moves in a way that is permanent. If you think about when people do weddings, one of the things that they say that what God has put together, let no man put asunder, right? And the thing is that nobody could put it asunder. If God put it together, nobody could put it asunder. And so your only fair conclusion when it has fallen apart is that it wasn't put together by God. I felt that. So any questions on that? Y'all quiet tonight. This is odd. Alita says, God is good all the time. So your sickness is good. Well, so let's deal with that, right? So what we teach is that you call it good, right? You call it good because you are using the only power that you have. Once it's out in the physical, you can't change that, right? That thought has already been thought, that seed has already been sown. The only thing that you have the ability to do is to reframe how you see it. That's where your power is. Your power is not in going and digging up a seed that's already germinated and produced an effect. Your power is in responding to the effect. And so when we say call it good, we're not saying call it God. We're saying call it good, because by doing that, you're transmuting it. It's a transmutation technique that whatever it is, I was thinking about this today because I have this delightful little phone that I have, and it's special. It drops text messages. It in fact, one of my girlfriends, I had texted her to say, hey, can you watch Jordan tonight? And she texted me back and said yes, but I saw a message that said no. And so I texted back and I was like, okay. So I started making other plans. And so she calls me today like, okay, so now we're going to pick up Jordan. I'm like, wait, what? So you call it good, right? That no matter what it is, I call it good because I have control over what it becomes for me. That I can curse it and it'll be that for me. It'll be a curse for me. Or I can call it good. That's where my power is. Alita says, no, I was saying that God doesn't make you sick because God is good. Yes. Got it. Constance says sickness is a part of our misuse of our God power. Yeah, that's exactly the power you use to create illness is the same power you use to manifest health and perfection. Same power. Absolutely. You are whole even now. You are whole even now. If you can open your mind to consider the dynamics of Jesus's teachings, you will begin to see through the mirror instead of in it. If you can open your heart to see the dynamics of his teachings, and what you will see is that beyond the appearances in the mirror is the total person you are in spirit. We live concurrently in two worlds, the visible and the invisible, or the physical and the spiritual. And it's concurrent. And so in the physical, it's the world where we have these fluctuating experiences of sickness and health. right? Of peace and war, of harmony and chaos. But we also live in a spiritual world as a spiritual being. And what Jesus is saying is that don't be misled in appraising yourself in life. You are whole, even if you are experiencing sickness, and you can be healed because you are whole. You are whole, even if you are experiencing sickness, and you can be healed because you are whole. If you were not whole, there would be no way for you to ever get rid of any sickness. If you were not whole, there would be no way for you to ever, a popular thing for people to say, or that I hear, and, another one of those things that, like, is a nails on chalkboard for me, is this idea of brokenness, and God saw me in all of my brokenness. And we have long conversations about my brokenness. That's like, right? Because there is that in you that is greater than your weakness, stronger than your fears. It's the four-dimensional creature, the Christ of your being, that is whole even within your sickness. And the thing that you have the ability to do is to be able to look beyond the appearance. One of the things that we work on in seminary, and when we're doing spiritual counseling and doing pastoral visits in hospitals, is that we don't go in the hospital seeing the illness. In fact, if you can't get yourself right, don't go in the hospital. You walk in the hospital seeing wholeness. I'm going Saturday afternoon to check on a friend's mom who is in a facility, and who has a manifestation. That's right. But I don't walk in seeing the manifestation. I walk in seeing the wholeness. I walk in seeing her as she is. The truth of how she is. Constance says, we just don't understand our divinity and the perfection and wholeness that is always available to us. Yes. Yes. The bonkers of the conquest. Yes, that was a saying of Johnny Coleman. Said she wouldn't name illness, and so she'd say, "Yeah, they told you got the bonkers of the conquest. Now you believe it. You walking around talking about your condition. How many people you hear, and they use the possessive pronoun. They'll say, my bad back. My sciatica. And it's like, oh my God, y'all, stop it, please, quit it. Seriously, quit it. My sugar. No. My health, because the same energy that you use to say my whatever is that you could say my health, my steadily improving back. My knees are getting better. My beautiful knees that continue to support me. I mean, these are choices. You could say anything. You could say anything. Why not say what empowers you? Constance said they be proud of saying it too. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And I'm saying, be proud of the presence of God inside of you. I asked this question at the talk this weekend, that part of setting the condition for true prayer is a recognition of God as your father, mother, right? If God is your parent. And we say this a lot, and that God is my source, whatever. But what would it look like if you actually believe that? I mean, you think about the things that we take pride in, where we got our degree, or the family that we were born into, or the friends that we know, or the whatever, right? That what would it look like if you actually believed that God was your parent? Like, how would you live life if you believe that God was your parent? Right? If you really, really believe, because our lives reflect what we actually believe. I mean, you can say whatever you want to, make every affirmation you think you need to, but our lives reflect what we actually believe. And if we really believe that God was our father, mother, that God was our parent, that my earthly parents were just vessels to get me here, but my true lineage, that where I come from is God, which does not know failure. Right? Because I think I think about my parents. My parents both of them are very ambitious people. And I've been known to say, I got it honest, because both of them are ambitious. Both of them are driven in their own ways, in terms of how they do things. And there's a source of pride about that. Right. But what if I flip that? How would I, if I really believe that God was my parent, and you think about the understanding I have about God, that God cannot fail at anything, how is it that, like, how would I live life if I actually believed that God was my parent? How would I show up for life? Constance says, because of your teachings, I'm so amazed at how God blesses me perpetually at the subconscious level and the life I have. Yes. And you do have a good life, Constance. You do have a great life. I agree with you. Make the report from your divine side. If somebody says to you, how are you? You have a choice. You can answer from the standpoint of your human experience or from your spiritual wholeness. Your answer is going to depend on the level of experience that you focus upon. And so sometimes people may feel like they're lying if they say, oh, I'm doing well. But, on a physical level, you can say, I'm not feeling so good today. Right. But from the level of the divinity within you, you could actually say, you know what? I am the perfect expression of infinite life. Both statements are true. I learned this from Reverend Della. Whenever I would go and see her or go and talk to her, after service, or go to her house or whatever. And I would say, hey, how you doing, Reverend Della? And she would say, I'm getting better and better every day. And so it didn't matter that she may have been dealing with something that day or whatever. It's like, no, I'm getting better and better. And that's a statement that she can make that doesn't feel like a lie to her and actually is the truth and affirms her spiritual wholeness. So, we always have this option about how we're going to respond. We always have an option. And so we have to make the report of our lives from the divine side. If we make the report from the physical side, then that's what we'll get. That's what we will manifest. And this is actually the key to affirmative prayer, that you speak the word of truth about the situation, which is to identify with your spiritual side instead of your physical side. And no matter what the experience, you are a spiritual being living in a spiritual world. You are the self-livingness of God right now. Prayer is not an attempt to make you spiritual, because there's nothing you can do anyway to change the nature of God or to change the nature of who you are to God. There is that in you that needs no change. There is a spiritual man or woman in you, the divinity of you, that never gets sick. And if you did get sick, if it could get sick, medicine, surgery, Jesus, nothing could heal you if it did. There is that body in you that never changes, even if the cells themselves are hurt and destroyed. There is a body in you, your spiritual body, that never changes, even if the cells themselves are hurt and destroyed. Yes, there is sickness. Yes, there is pain. I like Eric Butterworth's approach to this. He did this in an earlier chapter where he talked about, walking around saying there is no evil when you've clearly got people doing evil things. It's just, it makes people not take you seriously. And spiritual healing is not based on this Pollyanna philosophy that there is no sickness and there is no pain. Because if you have ever gone in a hospital, like I told you tomorrow, I'm going to a facility. You can see that there is a lot of sickness in our world, and a lot of it is excruciatingly painful. So spiritual healing does not require you to pretend a condition doesn't exist. In truth, you can't heal what you won't face. You cannot heal what you will not face. What it does call for you to do is to develop an awareness that another reality exists and can be chosen by you. So it doesn't require, so we're not saying pretend like you don't have cancer, or pretend like you're not out of money, or pretend like you don't have a companion. We're not asking you to pretend like that's not the condition that exists in your experience. What we're saying with spiritual healing is develop an awareness that there is another reality that exists and you can choose it. There's another reality that exists and you can choose it. He gives this a really great analogy in the text. I'm going to share it with you since I get the chat up. Make sure I keep that up. And this is what he says. He says, you may be living, this is on page 167, 168. You may be living in the basement of your house, uncomfortable, cold, cramped, and hampered by darkness. But there is still a whole house. I would not say that you are not cold and uncomfortable in your basement. But what I could say is that this condition can be changed and that there is a warm, comfortable, and well-lighted house that you can occupy right now if you get out of the basement. If you get out of the basement. And so, I dug that. I was like, that's it. Is that I'm not telling you that right now you're not walking around with, quote unquote, osteoarthritis in your body or in your knees or whatever. But I'm saying that there's an alternate reality that exists where your body is whole. And if you can get out of the basement, if you can let go of the idea that you have to be in the basement, if you can let go of the idea that you have to have this condition because your mama had this condition, or because you've got it and it's been diagnosed, or right. If you can get out of the basement, you can get into the house. And the secret to the spiritual healing is letting go of the belief that I gotta have it. And there's so many things that we believe that we have to have because just listen to people's reasonings. Reverend Mary used to say, your reasons only got to make sense to you. That's it. They don't have to make sense to anybody else. They don't have to be based in truth. All they have to do is make sense to you. As long as they make sense to you, they're your reasons. And so there's more to life than this experience. That's really what we're trying to get to with this spiritual healing, that you reach this place where you realize there's more to life than just this experience. And you open your eyes and see, and you open your mind and perceive. You don't need to know how to get out of the basement. You just need to know that you can get out of the basement and that an alternate reality exists. And then hold that and move to the idea that you realize that within you, in the kingdom of heaven within, that there is a power and a life and a substance that is sufficient to establish you in wholeness and abundant living. And you lean into that. You lean into that I may not know how to get out of this basement, but I know that I don't have to be in the basement. And just hold into the idea that I don't have to be in the basement opens a way for the imprisoned splendor, for the grace of God to move around the corners of your life, find you, and begin to move you into that place of abundance. And so it's separating yourself from your experience in such a way that you say that just because this is what that I'm experiencing, it does not have to be what I continue to experience, that it is the experience and not me. Ray says, I love the idea of another reality for me. I'm taking that to bed with me tonight. It makes perfect sense to me. Yes. Joe says, I live in disability housing and sometimes we swap complaints. I'm ready for a change. Yes, girl. Yes, 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 yes. That made my night, Joe. Phyllis says, I am in the basement right now and it's cold. I have the choice of going upstairs and to be warm, but I somehow like it down here. Yeah. Said it. You said it, that sometimes the basement feels good and is working for us. And so we stay in the basement because it's serving some purpose. It's either making mama right, or making daddy right, or making the community right, or making the culture right, or making the ethnicity right, or making the race right, or oh Lord. And I'm saying, just hold to the idea that I don't have to be here. Hold to the idea that I don't have to be here. Okay. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it.
Are you the only one allowed to speak? I mean, this is your platform.
No, say something.
I don't want to be a
Hi,
troublemaker, like Leah Remini.
maker. Be a troublemaker. Come on.
No, you asking the wrong person, but I'll try.
Okay.
So you ever heard of the Jehovah's Witnesses? You speak out against them? Or?
Do I speak against them? I don't speak against anybody.
Oh, I'm a former Jehovah's Witness, and part of my religion is speaking out against them.
Oh, okay. No, 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 no. I don't speak against anyone because all paths lead to God.
Even Jehovah's Witnesses?
All paths lead to God.
I've never heard somebody include Jehovah's Witnesses in that.
All paths lead to. So you got. So God is infinite, right? God is infinite, and there is no. There are many ways. It says, "In my Father's house are many mansions." There are many levels of consciousness to dial in on. And so the Jehovah's Witnesses are dialed in on a particular area, on a particular level of life. But God is everywhere evenly present. There is no spot where God is not. I can choose. I can get to a place where I choose and I say, you know what? This no longer serves me. So I grew up in the missionary Baptist church in Houston, Texas. And that was my foundation. And in that church, they believe that women shouldn't preach. And that never felt true to me, even as a little girl, when I couldn't, women couldn't sit on the front row. In fact, so there was another church that we ended up going to for a little while, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, and the pastor, Bill Lawson, and his daughter was Melanie Lawson, and he didn't have that same idea about women and preaching and all of that. And Melanie came to speak. She's a anchor in Houston. She came to speak at my church, the church that I grew up in. And so she goes up to the main platform because Daddy's a preacher and that's what I do. And we ain't got no issues with women in the pulpit. And don't you know, they moved her over to the side lectern. So you can say that this is no longer how this no longer works for me. This no longer work that because here's the thing. All spiritual teaching that's worth its salt is to get you to the center of your being, to the Christ of your being. All of these other names and this is for us. This is not for God. God has no name. Right. And the focus is, can I get you to the center of your being? Can I get you to see that there is that within you that is formless, that moves according to the way that you think and feel, and that will pour out a blessing for you, but it'll pour out through you. And some people chant and it helps them get to that place of all possibility. And some people go and believe that you got to witness to get to that place of all possibility. But no, I don't speak against any religion.
Earlier, you spoke about a kingdom within you.
Yes.
The Jehovah's Witnesses teach it's a literal government that's going to fight the other governments on this planet.
You know, I've never studied the Jehovah's Witness. In my concept of God and what I study and what I teach, God is at peace. So God fights no one. But again, in my Father's house are many mansions. There are many levels in which to dial in on life. So I have people in my family. I have people in my family that are dialing in at the highest level of life as far as, resources and living life. And I have people in my family who are dialing in at the lowest of the low. You look around and it's like, oh my God, have you reached rock bottom yet? Have you touched rock bottom yet? Because it's kicking me in my butt watching you drop so low. That there are many levels to dial in to life. And so when I think about these spiritual teachings and the different spiritual teachings, there are different levels at which to dial in to the presence and the power of God. And I free people to make the choice that feels right to their soul, believing that, be it this lifetime, next lifetime, or whenever, that they will come to that place of awareness that God is all there is. But I don't. I follow Jesus's concept of God, and when you study what Jesus teaches about God, if you go look at the 13th chapter of Matthew, his kingdom parables, when he's describing what God is like. And then also John 4, chapter 4, when he's talking to the woman at the well, that what he is describing how God is. And he starts with the kingdom of heaven is like. The kingdom of heaven is like. And he said, but basically like the kingdom of God, heaven is a Matthean term, because you don't, in the Jewish practice, you don't say the name God. And so Matthew, sourcing Mark, changes all the places where Mark says kingdom of God to kingdom of heaven, but that's a Matthew creation. What you find is that he is teaching that God is compassionate, that God is full of love, that God is full of peace, that God generously gives to his creation. When you read the especially like the parable of the prodigal son, where in the story the son is us and the father is God, that even when we go and mess up and use up all of our resources, that the moment that we come to ourselves, before we can even get on the road to go back, the father has already been out looking for us. And when he gets just even the slightest glimpse that we're on our way back home to him, that he runs, is kill the fatted calf, throw a party, give me a ring, because my son has been found. So I follow Jesus's concept of God, and I don't find any place where Jesus speaks about God warring. Olga says, I'm going to get this one comment. She says, I refuse to let sickness enter my space. It hurts me to see people not taking charge of their health. Yes. Go ahead. You're going to make another comment.
Oh no, I just wanted to say, is your Jesus an angel, or is he in the form of God, of the Father?
I'm not sure if I understand the question entirely.
Some people believe that Jesus is Michael, the chief angel, and I don't.
Oh, I'd never heard that. I mean, that's just not a teaching that I know about. But Jesus was a human being who discovered his divinity and taught that great things have I done and greater things shall you do also, that you too are divine. Constance says, we also have to understand someone is a concept of what God is to them, an outer or inner person or spirit. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Constance, that a lot of times, so many people everybody has a concept of God. Everybody has a concept of who and what God is. Nobody's concept of God is God. Because for the concept to be true, God would have to be circumscribed inside that definition. So it's and one of the hardest things to get people to do is to actually grasp that they have a concept. Most people think that their concept is God. But just to sit with the understanding that, wait a minute, this is just like you said, you got to a place where the concept of God that the Jehovah's Witnesses were presenting to you no longer made sense. I reached a point that the concept of God that I learned in the missionary Baptist church that I grew up in no longer made sense. That there were things that just in my own spirit just didn't make sense. And for my spiritual growth, I had to move on. I felt like continuing to study in that way when none of it resonated with me was untrue. And what really kept me in church and led me to be a minister is that I just always felt like there was something more and it was worth finding. Shauna, were you going to say something? Constance says, yes, God cannot be described. We are using words to understand the vastness and infinite idea of source energy. Okay, let me do this. I love the comments so thank you for saying that. I want to make sure I just get through the outline, but please, if there's another question, speak. God only wills health. All of life is self-healing. Your money, your health, your relationships, everything. So think about the fact, if you get a paper cut, as soon as you get a paper cut, it begins to heal itself instantaneously. And provided that you don't pick the scab, healing occurs, period. That process is a principle. That healing process is a principle. And it repeats across all of life. So the finger can be healed because you're already whole. There is that in you that is changeless and perfect. It is the Christ of you. It is the divinity of you. And so even though that wholeness is always seeking to assert itself. The wholeness of God is always seeking to assert itself. And there are places where we're willing to allow it, and there are places where we fight it with everything that we have. But the God's wholeness is always trying to press itself out in you. Most of us can handle a paper cut. We know, just don't pick it, put a Band-Aid on it and let it go. But there are other things in our lives where we never stop picking the scab. So our money and our finances, wholeness is always trying to assert itself. But we pick the scab when we keep habits that don't support healthy attitudes and relationships with money. In our marriages, wholeness is always trying to assert itself. But we pick the scab by not bringing compassion and forgiveness. We begin to take the person for granted. And so we pick the scab in the relationship. And so wholeness never gets to fully assert. It keeps trying to, but it never gets to fully manifest because we keep interfering with it. We have a built-in capacity for health. The healing force is good, and it ceaselessly works to establish wholeness in you. God is always trying to press out into expression through you. We interfere with that through the way that we think, through the way that we feel, which then drives what we do and what we say and how we respond to life. And so we have to open up to the idea that God only wills health, that there's no such thing as God willing illness or pain, or because if God did will it and God is unchanging, it means that God is always willing it. And so God cannot will health and also will sickness, because they opposites of one another. So you have to pick which God you're going to serve. Constance says, as free will thinkers, we always have choice. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So again, it's leaning in that what is my concept of God? What is my concept of God? What am I working with? What do I believe about God? Because that's what's manifesting in my life. That's what's manifesting in my life. Oh, I love that, Linda. Linda says, I am a living witness to spiritual healing. I know I had a diagnosis but refused to accept it. I knew the wholeness and no more of that diagnosis. Amen. Yes, 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 yes. Yes. Do you want to be well? That's really the question we got to ask. He says this on page 171. He said he asked this surprising question to the man that was at the water that sat there for 38 years. Somebody wanted to be well, but people kept coming and getting in the water, so he could never get in the water. And he was like, well, do you really want to be healed? And he writes, Jesus was a master psychologist. He knew that one of the minor pleasures in life is to be slightly ill. Man does not always have the courage to face up to the challenges of life. He escapes in many directions, one of which may be into sickness. He may think he wants to be healed, and he may do everything he knows, exhaust every possibility, spend a small fortune in the process, and still find no help, because subconsciously he is finding security in his sickness. Perhaps the thing that we allow to persist gives us a reason not to play life full out. Whatever it is, right? Because maybe it might not be sickness in the body, but it might be sickness in the money, or it might be sickness in the relationship. And so you got to ask yourself, do you want to be healed badly enough to give up your feelings of self-pity, to reject the long-standing habit of dwelling in despair and despondency, to be satisfied to live without the attention and assistance and sympathy of others? Are you willing to take command of the forces within you and issue an executive order? And I love what you said, Joe, earlier. That made my whole night, about the swapping the stories, because I've been that person. I've done that in a different way, where I'm swapping hardships almost, like, oh, oh no, your day is busy. No, 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 no. Look how busy my day is, and we're going back and forth about all the things we got on our plate. I feel like I got, everything on my plate, and this is too much to bear. And I don't know what no, 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 no. And so he offers this spiritual treatment, that the next time that when you want to will to do the will of God, is, Spirit, let your perfect will be done in and through me. I accept your healing activity. I will to will your will. I desire healing, for I believe that anything less than health and the desire for health is a rejection of your presence as life in me. Let your perfect will be done in and through me. I release the need to not have enough of and fill in the blank. I release the need to carry this ailment around anymore. I release my attachment to it. Pray that prayer. You really, honestly, a few days will knock that out, but it might be something that sticks. So you might have to pray a little bit more. But if you go and if you take that into your prayer closet on a daily basis, it has to go. And I love that Shauna, she says it requires responsibility. Yeah, it does. It requires responsibility. Alita says people find security, comfort, attention, and sickness. Yeah. Some children don't call until you're sick. And so you have learned, consciously or subconsciously, that I got to get a little bit crazy or a little bit, out of whack in order to get it. But here's the thing. If the sickness is there, whatever it is working for you on some level. And so sometimes we can get in our feelings about these sicknesses. I wouldn't choose this. I wouldn't, well, listen, honey, it's there. Okay. And nothing shows up unless it's doing some work for us. Phyllis says we have to keep rewriting the script of life so we can have that health that is ours. Yes, ma'am. That's it. That's amen, Phyllis. Amen. Number 9, and this is the last one. Faith enables you to look beyond appearances. And faith is so important when we're talking about spiritual healing, because it's not just the desire to be whole. It's not just the hope that somehow, if conditions are right, God is going to heal you. It's the perception of wholeness. It's looking and saying, I'm whole no matter what. You might be working with something where it's protruding out of your body. And you have got to look beyond that appearance and say, I don't care what this looks like. I am going to pray, believing I have received and I shall receive. That's the promise. That's the promise. The promise is that if I can believe it, I can have it. And so once you decide to be well, then you got to see yourself well. And so if you getting up in the morning and the condition is presenting itself, you can say to the condition, you're getting better and better every day and leaving my life right now. And so you walk and talk only health, happiness, and wholeness. One of the affirmations, this is actually one of my morning affirmations, which is, I say to myself in the mirror, Sherri, you believe in happiness, progress, and prosperity. So talk only happiness, talk only progress, talk only prosperity. And one of the beautiful things that has come of this is the places where I wasn't doing that. That just saying it began to open my eyes to the places where I wasn't always talking happiness, always talking progress, always talking prosperity. I was almost like the walking dead in some of these areas where I wasn't noticing things that I was saying. And so just affirming that on a daily basis in the mirror in the morning opens that puppy up. And I love what he says. He says, faith, this is on page 172, 173, right at the bottom of 172. He says, faith is not simply faith is the eye that sees the spirit, the hand that clings to the spirit, and the receiving power that appropriates the spirit. It sees the spirit. It's like the hand that clings, right? And you think about that. Like when I was handing off Jordan tonight, he was so sleepy. He didn't want to go. He wanted to just go home and go to sleep. And so he was laying on me, just clinging to me. And it was like, oh, I feel so bad, but I got to hand you off, babe. Faith is that the eye that just sees the spirit, and the hand that clings, like it won't let go. God, I'm going to stay here because I know that you're going to bless me. Go ahead, Andrea.
Nothing you could do anyway to change
Andrea. Hello.
Who you are to God.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to talk.
Okay, got it.
No change.
That
Man or woman in you, the divinity.
I'm gonna take it down. Okay, there we go. Shauna says confidence pulls even if no healing, that life force itself envelops and purports good days. Yes. And I love that sentence, but it's that you just cling to it, that I'm going to hold to the healing. I'm going to hold to the healing. Yeah, the doctors said whatever they said, but I'm going to hold to the belief that I can have what you said I can have. And I'm going to stand on it despite the appearance. And I'm going to know that I'm being divinely led and drawn to the right resources right now to handle the situation. And if you keep showing up with that, especially showing up with it every day, it has no power. It flat out has no power. So now it's time to do something. Because, maybe you've been giving spiritual healing the side eye. But are you open to being completely free of any condition that now limits you? Really sit with that. What are you really willing to get rid of? Not just what you want to get rid of, but what are you willing to get rid of? And then take some time after this video to reflect on forgiveness. Because where have you been resisting God's healing life force? Right? It's balled up in unforgiveness. Where have you been resisting this life force? And then finally, leave a comment on the YouTube video for this lesson. What was your biggest takeaway, and how can you use what you've heard? Questions. Phyllis says, too many times we listen to the critter brain and enter into flight, fight, or freeze and defeat our health and well-being. I like that, Phyllis. That's exactly right. Fight, flight, or freeze. Because we always think of fight or flight, right? But sometimes we freeze. Hello, somebody. I don't know if you're, I know I have frozen. I know I have. I have frozen sometimes where it's like I'm in stuck mode. I love that, Phyllis. That's going in a sermon. Hold on, I gotta write that down. Fight, flight, or freeze. I'll credit you, Phyllis. I like that because that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's that fight or flight, and sometimes you just take no action. So you're just sitting still. Eve says, I am like Jesus, the beloved Son of God. Therefore, I cannot be sick or die. I can only transform. Hello. Yes. Constance says, excellent class. Great statements to stimulate our thinking. Thank you. Yes, I'm telling you, that fight, flight, or freeze. That, Phyllis, you got something. I don't know where you got that from, but that's good. Quintina says, I have frozen sometime that is difficult. Yes. Listen, You know what? I'm not really a fighter. I don't fight. That's not really it. That ain't, I ain't got no time for fighting. But I have flight where I run from something, and that freezing, I have frozen. I have where I've just, it's like I've parked it and it's and just dragging my feet. And can anybody say a book that's supposed to be coming out soon? Just frozen. Like any other questions before we wrap up? So next week, we're almost out of this text. We only got a couple more, like we're by mid-May, we're done with this. So probably we'll start looking at where you guys want to go next. If there's a because I need about 3 weeks to just kind of get all the lesson plans and stuff together. But next week, we're going to talk about the miracle of abundance, which is chapter 14, starts on page 175. The miracle of abundance. So Linda says, I have been all three. I know, Phyllis, you said something there, girl. I'm telling you, that's going in the sermon. When y'all hear it, know it belongs to Phyllis Bannon. So Constance said, go ahead, tell on yourself, girl. You realize it's me, Lord. It's me standing in need of prayer. It's me. I am my own issue. Anyway, have a lovely night. Thank you so much. You're right. Can't be nobody else. No, I cannot. No, we cannot. No, we cannot. I appreciate you guys. This platform was pretty good. I don't know what the video quality was like. Was it a good quality? Were you guys no glitches?
Yeah, when I was on the video, it was good, but I prefer here.
Okay. All right. So, I think this might be it. So I think what I'm able to do is to set it up as an event, and because I couldn't, well, anyway, but I can't get the link for you to sit where come in the broadcast until I actually open the green room. So that part I will, that'll have to go out on Thursdays, but I can set it up. I can set it up ahead of time. So, okay. All right. YouTube live. All right. Okay, good. No stutter, because whatever that was last week was ridiculous. So probably the thing that matters, and this is for anybody that is seeing this broadcast, weeks later, months later, and not connected to the revsherri.com community. You need to go to revsherri.com and sign up for my newsletter. And there's a box right under there. It's related to the book that's coming out, but if you just put it in there, it'll still go. And Shauna says, I wasn't registered. No, you don't have to be. And I think on the watch page, let me look. I think that there is a button at the top. I think that there is a button at the top where you can click it and you'll actually get an alert when it's going live. I think. I don't want to make that, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. So, Shauna says, I saw you in my subscriptions. Okay. That's something you can subscribe to the channel and you'll get an alert that way. So there's a couple of different ways. So, but thank you guys. Have a great night, and I will see you guys next week. Yay. I'm actually really pleased. Good. Okay, great. Bye.